Have you ever stopped to think about how convenient plastic products make our lives today? As a result, there is a staggering amount of plastic products that end up in the oceans and cause a massive amount of plastic pollution. My name is Aimee and I decided to do my final presentation on the topic of plastic pollution in our oceans because it is a worldwide problem that needs attention. In my presentation, I will go over a few different key principles of the issue of plastic pollution. Those will include some of the basics, the widespread issue of plastic pollution, the harmful effects on marine wildlife, and efforts and ideas for prevention and reduction. Here are some basics about oceanic plastic pollution. The rise of plastic pollution is a result of our increasingly dependent nature on produced plastic convenience waste. Example, plastic shopping bags, silverware, water, and other beverage bottles, etc. Knowledge of the plastic waste problem really came to light about 20 years ago, back in 1997, when Sea Captain Charles Moore came across what is now known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And he started to kind of look at the source of the problem. It was shocking when he first discovered it. And this led him to form a research facility called the Algalita Marine Research and Education. This has been a crucial center for researching the issue, and they continue to be very active in trying to find solutions of how to address the problem of plastic pollution in our oceans. Eventually, plastic breaks down. It does take a while, but the sun and salt water help speed this process along a little bit. And it breaks into small particles which are hard to filter out and are also commonly consumed by marine wildlife. The species think it is part of their natural food source, and they consume it and absorb the toxins into their tissue. And also, it needs to be noted that the amount of plastic production and consequently the pollution has increased at an alarming rate. For example, in the first decade of the 21st century, we made more plastic than all the plastic production in history up to the year 2000. This slide shows a picture of some plastic pieces found floating in the ocean. And this is some of the plastic that I mentioned that the wildlife ingest, thinking that it's part of their natural food source. Plastic pollution is indeed widespread in our oceans. There are certain areas that trap pollution more heavily than others, and that is because the currents move in such a way that they become zones known as convergent zones, which are pushed by winds, tides, and currents. And in the next slide, I will have a diagram of some of the convergence zones in the Pacific Ocean. These areas of accumulation are known as gyres, and they occupy almost 40% of the ocean surface worldwide, which is really if you think about that, that is a huge ratio of the surface water of our oceans. There is a layer of soupy mix. It's a layer of the degradation of the plastic breaking down. And in a coming slide, you will also see how the layer is. Plastic pollution is not only sourced from items of convenience, but also as a result of items in the fishing industry, including floats, nets, lines, and tubes. This slide features a diagram of some of the subtropical convergence zones in the Pacific Ocean, and you can see where the currents and tides kind of swirl heavily accumulated areas of the plastic pollution, and they kind of just sit there. They can't really move around, and they just sit in a massive pile. This diagram breaks down the layers of the garbage patches. So you can see in the diagram to the right, there's the topical area of pollution, and below that is where the soupy mixture is that I mentioned of the plastic that's degrading. And below that are the currents that move this pollution into kind of a swirl where it just kind of continues to subside in these certain areas. There are many harmful effects on marine wildlife by plastic pollution in the oceans. Nearly 300 species of marine wildlife are affected by plastic debris in the oceans, ranging from sea turtles to monk seals to birds. Marine species get entangled in plastic pollution such as six-pack hand rings, as you can see in the photo of the blue heron on the right side of the frame. Sea life species consume broken down pieces of plastic, which is potentially toxic to them. Some of the toxins in the plastics include PCBs and BPA. Some of these species are then consumed by humans, furthering the chain of toxic substance consumption. One hypothesis that is being tested is that more sea animals are killed by plastic pollution each year than effects of climate change. This diagram gives some eye-opening numbers and percentages of how plastic is affecting our oceans and wildlife. For example, 267 species around the world are harmed by plastic. It's kind of what I said about that number earlier, approximately 300. 86% of sea turtles, 44% of seabirds, and 43% of ocean mammals ingest or become tangled in plastic. This is just another diagram reminding us of how marine life is affected by the toxins in the plastic pollution. Prevention and reduction. The biggest thing is educating the general public on the problem and encouraging a shift in consciousness for being so dependent on these plastic convenience items. This includes banning the single-use plastic items such as Target shopping bags and other store shopping bags, encouraging recycling, and making plastic items more easily recyclable. It's also including a global scale improvement of plastic waste management. And I will show a slide of certain areas of the world where they have difficulty in their plastic waste management. And really, experts agree that we need to start from the root of the problem. It's much more difficult to retrieve plastics from the ocean once they are there. This is a diagram that shows the sources of plastic mismanagement. Finally, I'm going to leave you with a slide that just kind of gives you an overall view of plastic pollution and the effects on our oceans. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope it'll give you some thought about how we can all work together to reduce some of the plastic pollution in our oceans.